How's it going, everyone? Paul with Adaptable Survival. What I want to do in today's episode is continue on in our basic outdoor skills video series, in particular talking with fire starting. In this episode, we're going to cover fire construction, the basic elements that create a fire, plus 5 uses for that fire. Stick with me as we dive into it. So the keys to any good fire are heat, fuel, and oxygen. Those are the basic elements or basic components of a fire that we need to control to make sure that we're building an effective fire that's going to last so we can walk away, complete other tasks around camp. Each one of them is vitally important. If there's lack of one and more of another, you will not get the right combination to get your fire going. So first up, we'll talk about heat. Now, obviously, this is going to be your number one source for combustion. When you look at the options that I discussed in the ignition sources video, Bic lighter is going to be number one, just because I can pull it out of my pocket, pull it out of my pack, flick the Bic, and have open flame. With it being colder now, I will have to make sure that I maintain that piece of gear and keep it warm so that works effectively. Open flame is always going to be your best source for the most heat right now consistently. Ferro rods are still going to give you a very, very hot spark when you strike them, but the key component to using that is having some sort of tinder source that has enough surface area to really catch those sparks and ignite so that we can further build on in our fire. So next up is fuel, and I will break this down into 3 different categories that are all kind of falling under that one umbrella of fuel. Fuel is obviously your material that you're using to construct your fire, that you're trying to light on fire, thus having a fire. Number one in that is being tinder. Now, I covered pre-made tinders in a previous video, and moving forward, I will cover some natural materials, tinder materials that you can find off the landscape. The key thing I've always been preaching is have things in your kit so you can automatically get what you need done as quickly as possible. For me, I just try to be as efficient as possible with my time outdoors, so having quick ways to get a fire going, to boil water, all these other things allow me to enjoy nature and just kind of soak in my time out there. So tinder, when you're looking at it, is fire tabs, mini infernos, there's a whole laundry list. You type in fire starter online and you're going to find all sorts of pre-made tinders. Some examples of natural tinders that you can find off the landscape are inner bark from aspen, tulip poplar. You can even use cedar here in Wisconsin. Cedar is a little bit more prevalent than tulip poplar and aspen in certain parts. In my particular area, more so cedar. But there's dry grasses, there's just a whole host of stuff that you can start picking up on. So in your particular area, kind of research what trees are going to be the best resources for you in your situation, or wherever you may be traveling to. Kind of do a little bit of research of what trees are native to that area, so you know what resources will be available to you. In addition to tinder, which is going to take the flame from our Bic, from the sparks from our ferro rod, we're going to need to ignite some kindling. Now, when you think of kindling, I want you to think of pencil size and smaller, nothing larger than that. The main reason for that being is with that smaller diameter, it's going to heat up significantly faster compared to, a stick about the size of my thumb. It's going to give you more surface area because you'll be able to collect more of that since it's generally lighter. Now, just out here today, I collected a few dead branches off of a dead oak. And this is, ideally, when I'm teaching, what you want to grab is a branch like this, because now I have pencil size and everything smaller, as well as a flash tinder with these dry leaves. So I can partner that with any other resources I may have to get my fire going, just quickly, fast, efficient, especially if I find myself in a hyperthermia situation where I'm going to need to get warm as quickly as possible. Utilizing some of these resources together are going to make sure that fire is lit and ignites and goes really, really fast. So that third component for fuel for our fire is going to be larger logs or longer term fuel. Now I just grabbed this dead branch off of the ground. It's kind of rotten, so this really isn't ideal. I just grabbed this for a size reference. Whenever you're picking some long-term fuel or a larger fuel source, you want to look at anything, thumb size, larger, bigger than your wrist, up to like a down log. Those are all going to give you a long-term fuel source that's going to burn consistently for a long time. A thing with that to remember is softwoods are going to burn quicker, but hardwoods are going to burn longer, so you're going to get a longer burning fire, a little bit hotter fire out of hardwoods for any of your fuel sources. All right, now that we covered the 3 types of fuels that we look for when we are doing our fire construction, let's look at that third element in the fire triangle. You have your heat, you have your fuel, but you also need the oxygen. A fun fact about oxygen is fire uses about 16% oxygen to cause combustion, thus sustaining your fire. The air we breathe is about 21%. So you're going to have more than enough oxygen in the air that we breathe. The key component to make sure that our fire is getting enough oxygen is when we construct our fire lay, and making sure that we have enough airspace in there. Not constricting the airflow at all to where it kills out the flame or doesn't get enough oxygen into that fire, that flame to heat up the material, thus causing combustion and us building our longer term fire. If I have a clip of the Venturi effect, which is when you create your fire lay, that airflow that comes through the bottom, it's going to suck up into your fire. The fire is going to use that oxygen to combust furthermore, create more heat. So making sure that we have that oxygen flow is important. Like I said, if I do have a clip of that, I will throw it in here. If not, we will cover it in the next episode in this series, the fast fire. So stay tuned for that episode. Now that we kind of ran through some of the main components of heat, fuel, oxygen, and then all the subcategories of fuel, let's hop into 5 uses for fire. So 5 uses for fire. Number 1 is going to be core temperature control. So if you find yourself falling into some water and it's colder outside, like right now it's low 40s. If I was falling some water, I would have to get a fire going ASAP. In about 15 minutes, you can start having some very adverse effects to hypothermia. So making sure that we can always start a fire fast and efficiently, get that skill mastered. So if that situation ever does arise, we know exactly what we need to do to get that fire going now. We're not messing around with primitive ways of making fire to get that fire going. Now, I'm not saying not to practice primitive methods of fire. We will cover that in a future episode, but I'm always banking on the fast and efficient way of getting something done when I'm out in the woods. If I do find myself in a survival situation, or something happens where I need to get that fire going, and right now I want to make sure I have the gear on hand, or I know the resources in my area that I can grab to affect that fire. Use number 2 for our fire is disinfecting water. So we can always find water in most areas outdoors. There are some exceptions like the desert and stuff like that, but we can still find water. But the key thing with collecting water out in the wild is we aren't 100% sure what pathogens may or may not be present in that water. Boiling water is the number 1 efficient way to make sure that you're getting clean, drinkable water so you can stay hydrated, maintain your body, your mental state, your mental capacity, so you're not being hindered by dehydration. I will be doing a video diving deeper into pathogens, everything that we're worrying about with water collection, different methods of filtering out. I don't want to cover that quite in this video. I want to expand on that video, or on that topic, as much as possible. So that's going to get its own video down the road. But that is a number 1 use, or the secondary use of our fire. Also, like I was mentioning with core temperature control, what we can also use that fire to do for us is dry us out if we're wet, since that heat coming off there will dry out our clothing, dry out our body as we stand next to it. So to go along with disinfection of water, what we can also use our fire for is cooking. Now, if you watch any YouTube videos, some overnighters, camping videos, undoubtedly they'll end up cooking something on their fire, which is a great ability of fire, and we as humans have been doing that for hundreds of thousands of years, pretty much since we discovered fire. It's a great use of fire if that's what we're planning to do outdoors. So we can either cook food that we're bringing out with us or anything that we collect off the land, whether that's wild game, edibles, anything like that. We can really harness the power of our fire to further use those resources as we get them. Now, something to note with fire, open flame is going to warm you, coals are going to cook. So whenever you're planning to cook on a fire, don't worry so much about having a ton of flames out there. Get a nice hot coal bed set up, and then you can cook right on top of that, making sure you're making the best use of that fire. So that fifth use of fire is our ability to char material, and where this is going to come into play mostly is if we're limited on resources, or we want to extend the resources we do for as long as possible. We can char material that we get off the landscape, being that punk wood is rotting wood that we can find on the ground. I was looking around in the area today. I can't quite find anything that's going to be real ideal to show you that, but I do have some charred material in a tin that usually lives in my pack. Let me get this focused in here. So you take that punk wood, put it in a container, and char it. We can use our water bottle. We can use an Altoids tin. A lot of different sorts of tins, as long as we are restricting that oxygen flow so that the material inside doesn't combust. Alternatively, you can make char cloth. So using 100% cotton, we could put that in a tin, just like we will with char material. Char it over the fire, make sure that we're reducing that oxygen and carbonizing that material on the inside of that container. Now, the fifth use for our fire is signaling. Now, if we find ourselves stranded out in the backcountry, our cell phone dies, our satellite communicator dies, whatever situation might arise, if we know that that fire can do a lot of different things for us, and if we hear a helicopter, plane or something, or search and rescue in the area, we can take live plant material and throw that on top of our fire, and that's going to create a ton of smoke, create a smoke plume, which is going to raise pretty much straight up in the sky and be seen for a long distance. Now, weather factors will play into part of that. If it's really windy, it may not go straight up, but it may go off, but it's going to create a lot of smoke. Alternatively, if we find ourselves with, we find an old tire, we find plastic, anything like that, like a contractor bag, we could throw that on top of the fire, and that's going to create black smoke when burned. And that's going to be more ideal for winter conditions, where using the plant material is going to be better suited for when it's greener out, so that it kind of contrasts with the environment. So search and rescue can notice that, say, hey, that's not out of the norm, or hey, that's this in the general area that we're looking for so-and-so, and that's going to key them into your area. So in this video, I didn't want to dive heavily into each topic and go on deep dive down the rabbit hole. I wanted to keep them nice and basic, just so the concept, you can understand it and then pick it up and kind of explore it on your own. What I will do in future episodes is talk about how to use fire for core temperature control, cooking, disinfecting water. All those topics will get their own video, but I wanted to get kind of that general, the fire triangle, types of fuel sources, all those things kind of dialed into one episode. So as you're watching this playlist, you can kind of easily transition from each topic into the next. Now, like I said, I will intersperse some video and some photos from classes in the video as I'm talking about the different topics. If I don't, I will make sure that I highlight those in future videos. Down in the comment section down below, let me know what fire skills you like to try and perfect, and really hone that craft when you're outdoors. As y'all know, I'm always looking for that shared knowledge down in the comment section. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. That helps get more eyes on the channel, brings people into our community, so their knowledge base is partnered up with our knowledge base, so we can learn together and grow together. As always, this has been Paul with Adaptable Survival. Adapt your mind, your body, and your gear.